It all began on a quiet morning when I walked outside to admire the barn. I had just finished building. Sunlight spilled over its freshly painted red siding, the smell of sawdust still lingering in the air. I had poured months of sweat, late nights, and my entire savings into this project. This was more than just a barn. It was a symbol of everything I had worked for. But as I admired my hard work, a shadow fell across the property line. I looked up to see her, HOA Karen, glaring at me like I had personally offended the universe. Her voice, sharp as a whip, cut through the calm. "You're building this on HOA land. Stop immediately," she demanded. My heart sank. I had carefully measured, checked the deed, and triple verified with the local surveyor. There was no way I was on their land. But Karen's insistence was relentless, her tone dripping with authority. I tried to reason with her, explaining my survey results, but she waved me off, already dialing her HOA friends and muttering about fines, lawyers, and illegal structures. The confrontation escalated quickly. She sent threatening letters, and suddenly, our quiet neighborhood became a battlefield. Every interaction with her felt like walking through a minefield. Friends advised me to give in, to avoid escalating a legal mess. But something inside me refused. This wasn't just about a barn. It was about standing up for your rights, about proving that no amount of entitlement could override truth and property law. Weeks passed. Karen and the HOA escalated things to the point of filing a formal complaint. Their letters were intimidating, filled with legal jargon and demands for immediate removal of the barn. Meanwhile, I meticulously prepared my documentation, deeds, surveys, photographs, and property maps that proved the barn was entirely on my land. But the tension grew with every passing day. Neighbors whispered, some secretly rooting for Karen, others unsure whose side to take. Then came the day I realized something that changed everything. As I dug deeper into the HOA's property records, I noticed inconsistencies. Certain houses in the neighborhood didn't line up with their official lot boundaries. My curiosity and unease grew into a shocking realization. If my calculations were correct, Karen and the HOA might actually be standing on my land. The irony was mind-blowing. Could it be possible that in their obsession with my barn, they had completely ignored the truth about their own property? And that's when I knew this story wasn't just about a barn or a petty HOA dispute. It was about a battle that could turn the tables in the most unexpected way. I had to prepare for court, for confrontation, and for the truth to finally come out. After days of sleepless nights and endless cups of coffee, I finally decided it was time to dig deeper. The thought that Karen and the HOA might actually be on my land was both thrilling and terrifying. I knew I had to be meticulous. One wrong move could give them ammunition to dismiss my claims. Armed with a stack of property maps, historical survey records, and my own meticulous measurements, I began piecing together the puzzle. I started at the local county records office, filing through decades-old deeds and survey documents. I noticed a pattern of minor discrepancies that had gone unnoticed for years. Lines didn't match, lot numbers were outdated, and certain boundaries had never been officially verified. Every document I examined seemed to reinforce my suspicion. My land and the HOA's official claims didn't align. It was painstaking work, but every revelation felt like uncovering a secret the neighborhood had buried, under polite conversation and community meetings. Next, I hired a professional surveyor to confirm my findings. Watching them measure and mark the property line, I felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. Every measurement reinforced what I already suspected. My barn, my land, and the very foundation of Karen's complaints were built on a misconception, or more accurately, a monumental oversight. When the surveyor finally handed me the official report, I could barely contain my excitement. Karen's houses, and much of the HOA's claimed land, literally sat on my property. The irony was delicious, but excitement wasn't enough. I knew Karen would never admit this quietly. She thrived on confrontation, on making threats, on asserting control. I began preparing a legal case with the evidence in hand, consulting attorneys who specialized in property disputes. Every letter, every map, every photograph became part of a carefully constructed narrative that couldn't be ignored. I was no longer just defending my barn. I was defending the truth, the integrity of my property, and my right to stand my ground. As the day of the initial court hearing approached, the tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Whispers followed me down the streets. Karen was organizing her allies, sending letters to neighbors, trying to intimidate anyone who might testify in my favor. But I was ready. I had spent weeks preparing, anticipating every argument, every false claim they might throw my way. For the first time, I felt a sense of empowerment. This wasn't just about legal documents. It was about exposing the hypocrisy and entitlement that had defined Karen's reign in our community. The stage was set. Court would decide who truly owned the land, and the truth had never been so clear. I could almost see the shock on Karen's face when reality finally caught up to her. The morning of the court hearing arrived like a storm. I felt a mix of nerves and determination as I stepped into the courthouse, the scent of polished wood and legal papers filling the air. Karen was already there, flanked by her HOA cohorts. Her expression a mask of feigned confidence. She had practiced her lines, rehearsed her threats, and clearly expected this to be an easy victory. But I had something stronger. The truth, and the proof to back it up. As the judge entered, the room hushed. Every eye in the courtroom seemed to fix on us, on me, the supposed victim of HOA tyranny, and Karen, the self-appointed enforcer who had underestimated the power of evidence. My attorney began presenting the case, carefully laying out every deed, survey report, and historical record. Each piece of evidence painted a clearer picture. The barn was unquestionably on my land, and more shockingly, much of Karen's claimed property, including several of her houses, extended onto my deeded property. Karen's eyes widened as the surveyor testified, explaining in precise detail how the boundaries had shifted over time and how the HOA had been operating under outdated maps. Her voice, usually sharp and commanding, faltered when she tried to object. Every objection was overruled, every argument dismantled by the hard facts presented. I could almost feel the momentum of the courtroom shift with every piece of testimony. The energy in the room was electric, a mix of tension and disbelief. Then came the moment that would define the entire case. My attorney asked me to step forward and explain what had happened when Karen first confronted me about the barn. I recounted the entire story, the initial threat, the letters, the intimidation, and my painstaking investigation. I spoke calmly but firmly, detailing the irony that while Karen insisted I was on their land, her own houses were actually on mine. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Karen's confidence crumbled before our eyes. She fumbled through her notes, trying to deny the evidence, but the survey reports and historical deeds were irrefutable. Every claim she had made was exposed as either a misunderstanding or a blatant overreach. The weight of truth pressed down on the room, shifting the balance entirely. By the time closing arguments were made, it was clear. The barn was mine, the land was mine, and Karen had overstepped in spectacular fashion. As the judge prepared to deliver the ruling, a tense silence enveloped the courtroom. The moment of truth had arrived, and nothing could reverse the story that had been meticulously proven. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder across the courtroom. Every head turned as he began to speak, his tone deliberate and commanding. After reviewing all evidence, deeds, and testimonies, it is clear that the property in question, including the barn and portions of the disputed land, belongs to the plaintiff. My heart raced. Relief, triumph, and disbelief surged through me at once. Karen's face went pale, her carefully constructed confidence crumbling before the authority of law. The courtroom murmured. Neighbors who had whispered about the dispute for weeks now looked on in stunned silence. Some struggled to suppress smirks. Others stared at Karen, realizing for the first time that the woman they had seen as powerful and intimidating had been spectacularly wrong. The irony was delicious. She had spent months trying to assert control over my property, only to discover that her own home sat on my land. Justice had a way of turning the tables in ways no one could have predicted. As the ruling was formalized, the HOA's legal team tried to negotiate a settlement, but the judge made it clear. The land boundaries were not negotiable. The barn was legal, and any future claims without factual basis would carry penalties. Karen's objections fell flat. Her arguments lacked evidence. Her tone grew desperate, and for the first time, she seemed truly powerless. All the hours of intimidation, letters, and threats had led to this moment. A moment where the truth mattered more than arrogance. After the court session, I stepped outside, the crisp air filling my lungs. The barn stood proudly in the sunlight, a symbol not just of hard work, but of standing firm in the face of entitlement. Neighbors approached cautiously, offering congratulations, some apologizing for ever doubting my claims. It was a strange mix of relief and vindication. Karen, meanwhile, retreated into silence, her aura of control shattered. The neighborhood had learned an unforgettable lesson about assumptions, overreach, and the power of evidence. In the days that followed, the barn became more than a personal triumph. It became a story that spread throughout the community. It reminded everyone that confidence without facts is fragile, that bold claims can crumble under scrutiny, and that standing up for what is right is always worth the effort. As for Karen, she avoided eye contact and stopped attempting to enforce any rules beyond her authority. Peace, for the first time in months, returned to the land. This wasn't just a victory for me. It was a victory for truth, fairness, and anyone who has ever faced an unreasonable adversary. The barn remained, the property secured, and the lesson was clear. Never underestimate the quiet, determined person who knows the facts. And so the battle that started with threats and confrontation ended with justice in a neighborhood forever changed. The story of HOA Karen versus me would be remembered as a remarkable twist, a reminder that sometimes the tables turn in the most unexpected and satisfying ways. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible HOA and Karen stories. Your support is what motivates us to bring you even more amazing content.